What's going on, people? We are Tottenham TV here, back again with another video for you guys. And today we are going to be looking at the prospective deal of Timo Werner for Tottenham. We're going to be doing a bit of a deeper dive into some of the stats and why we're reading into why Tottenham are interested in Timo Werner, why Ange Postecoglou might want Timo Werner in the team, and what he's going to bring to the side. To talk me through everything surrounding this video, it's going to be Brian Daigle in the building today. Brian, are you excited for Timo Werner?
I'm so excited. I've put my glasses on so I can look at the stats we're going to pop up. So if that doesn't show how excited I am, I don't know what will.
Absolutely. And look, Timo Werner set to sign on a 6-month loan deal from RB Leipzig with an option to buy for about 15 million. I think in terms of the deal itself, you know, we've spoken about it before. Quite a smart deal from Tottenham in terms of, low risk, high reward kind of deal. You know, not much finance committed to it yet. We could potentially get a player who at one point in time, you know, was one of the most sought after forwards in European football when he was on form, albeit that was a few years ago. Obviously, he was known back then when he was at RB Leipzig for being a deadly finisher, you know, playing through on goal, playing as a central striker. Also being known to play on the left and the right, on the wing. I do think he is going to be playing for Tottenham, especially at the start, probably on the wing, I envisage. Yeah. But I'm sure that he will get his opportunities up front as well, as during the 6-month spell. But I've picked out a few things which are interesting to me as to why I think Tottenham have really looked at this Werner deal and gone with the data to suggest that he could really be a player to help us and in the forward line and really help bring some things that we don't have in the squad. And I'll explain why. The wingers we've had so far in the Premier League perform this season have been, look, I think our wide players have been good, you know. So far, we've had Kulusevski, Johnson, and Son play in our wide areas predominantly. And they performed to a pretty decent standard. But I've picked out a few things for what I can see from the data to suggest that Werner could bring something totally different to Tottenham's wide attack if he plays out wide than the current wide players are bring. So I want to look at the stats of what we're getting for our wide players at the moment, and then I'm going to compare it to Timo Werner. So if I look at this is Kulusevski's stats, these are his possession stats for this season so far. As you can see, he performs moderately well, gets a lot of touches in the final third compared to most other attackers. His take-ons are very mixed. His carrying is decent. Carries into the penalty area is very good, but like really strong. That's his strongest aspect. And you can see progressive passes received fairly decent as well. But it's a mixed bag when it comes to how he's able to carry the ball, take people on, and force attacks and touches in the final third. I think this is the things that Postecoglou really values in his wide players: ability to get on the ball in dangerous areas, take people on, and carry the ball into the penalty area, and really cause the opposition defenses and fullbacks problems. This is Kulusevski, probably our best performing winger on these aspects, but a fair mixed bag. If I look at Heung-min Son, you know, when he plays out wide, this is him against wingers at the moment. Obviously, he's playing decently at the moment out wide, but as you can see, doesn't perform amazingly in these metrics. Heung-min Son take-ons, not great. Carries into the ball, into the area, really not very strong. Touches in the final third as well, not that strong. Touch in the attacking third are pretty good, but touches in the middle third, not great. Progressive passes received, not very good. This is why I don't think Son's the most ideal wide player. I don't think he gets involved enough on the ball. And when he's on the ball, I feel like as well, potentially for a wide player, he'll have his moments like against Newcastle, but when it comes to being like a relentless, force, I feel like Son sometimes can be lacking. And then we look at Brennan Johnson. Again, Brennan Johnson's stats, when it comes to these elements, forms fairly poorly, to be honest. Doesn't bring these things to the table. He's decent again, carries into the penalty area. He's got that pace. He's decent at that. But again, take-ons, fairly poor. touches in the attacking third, decent, but touches overall not great. Doesn't get involved that enough. Progressive passes received, maybe isn't getting into positions to receive the passes enough. Where he's obviously very strong at, he doesn't get dispossessed a lot. He's pretty good at carries into the penalty area. But carries overall, he doesn't. The carrying metric for all our players I've mentioned, not very strong. They don't really pick up the ball and carrying it long distances. This is something they struggled at. So, you'll just bring Brian on back for a sec. As you can see, this is what we have at the moment. These are our current wingers, right? And as much as if I'm assessing their performances this season, they've been good, but there are definitely things missing in our wide play, which I think Postecoglou will want, right? I think we can agree on that.
Yeah, I think what you've just highlighted is obviously we've seen it recently, is we're just lacking that something different, that spark, that player that can come in and do something that the others are very similar in what they're doing. But when we've struggled, by the looks of this and the data backs it up, it's been all too similar, and we've needed something that can either come off the bench or start, and ultimately offer us something different. And at the moment, these three aren't really offering anything different, are they? Whereas when we look at Werner, we'll see.
And this is my point. Different. Now let's bring on Werner's stats when it comes to these metrics and just see what a difference he is compared to the other players you mentioned, albeit given the caveat, this is the first one we're going to look at is based on his last 365 days. That's about 1,600 minutes, predominantly in the Bundesliga and in the Champions League. But what a difference he is in these metrics compared to the likes of Son, Kulusevski and Johnson. You can see the touches, gets so much more involved in the game. He gets a lot more touches on the ball. Take-ons, probably the weakest element of this, but still pretty strong, well above average for take-ons. Does get tackled quite a bit, but look, definitely quite as adept, if not more adept or as adept as the other wingers we have in the squad at taking people on. Here's the most interesting bit, carries in the ball. Look how many carries he does compared to what we were seeing before from Johnson and Kulusevski and Son. He carries the ball so much more, especially into the penalty area and into the final third. Progressive carries so much higher than our current wingers. And also, look at the progressive passes received. He's picking up, he's getting himself in positions so much better and in so much more attacking positions than our current wingers as well. So I feel like if I look at these metrics, like he's much more, he gives us something totally different, especially in the wide areas, to what Son, what our current wingers are doing. If you're thinking, is this kind of these stats a one-off? Maybe it's a small sample size. Maybe it's because he's in the Bundesliga. If I look at his metrics from Chelsea, this is his time in the Premier League. If the one thing that's interesting to see is the take-on success is way down. So his dribbling is not as strong, but where he still performs very strong is, again, his carries into the penalty area, progressive passes received, touches in the attacking third as well, all very, very strong. So one things I can read into this is he gets in a lot of attacking positions, he positions himself to receive the ball very often and is good at receiving the ball, and when he does get the ball, he's extremely effective at carrying the ball up the pitch. Even if it's not taking people on, he carries the ball into offensive areas extremely effectively. And even in the Premier League, we can see that. And just to show you that this definitely isn't a one-off, this is his last season at Leipzig back in 1920. As you can see, obviously he was devastating this season for Leipzig. But again, this is again in the Bundesliga, but it performs extremely well in all these metrics for a wide player, like near the top percentile for every single one of these metrics. So it's not a one-off. This is something he's been consistently effective at. Basically, is the point I'm trying to make. And these things that he has been consistently effective at is things that we are actively missing in the squad. Things that our wide players are not doing enough. Again, I'll reiterate, I don't think our wide players have been bad by any stretch or been terrible, but Werner is clearly going to give us something completely different from these wide areas that we're not getting. Electric pace, we know he has. We know he's got the ability to run in behind people, but what is going under the radar is his ability to carry the ball from wide areas up the pitch with long distances, the ability to pick up the ball in dangerous areas a lot more often than our current attacking players do.
Yep.
And a similar ability to take people on as our kind of attacking players do. So I think these metrics highlight something for sure that I reckon the data team and Postecoglou have looked at and think, yes, Werner is in great form. But if you look at even now, the metrics I showed you were from the last 365 days. So technically when he's in his poor form, right? Even when he's not performing as he was, basically back in his peak Leipzig days, he's still performing very strong in these metrics, isn't he?
Yep.
And he's still performing very strong in the metrics that these things maybe are things that don't get highlighted, are they? These are things that aren't going to make headlines, but make for a very effective wide player.
So Simeon, what you've got to look at again to begin with, especially when you look at the Chelsea stats, is this was playing in a Frank Lampard and Thomas Tuchel style of football, which is completely different to what he's used to and where we've seen him predominantly shine under Nagelsmann, and who plays very, very, very similar to Ange Postecoglou, or Ange Postecoglou plays very similar to Nagelsmann, whatever way you want to look at. The amount of green that is covered across all these stats, and as we keep going back to, people are saying that this is going to be a bad signing. What does he offer? Well, the stats aren't lying. The data's there. He clearly, whether people want to say this is a good signing, whether people want to say, do you know what, he could do something, offers Tottenham Hotspur something different. At the moment, you bring on a Brian Hill, ineffective. You bring on, or when Solomon didn't get going, Perisic, we know what he could do. These people are unavailable to us at the moment. We need something different. We've said that we haven't been clinical enough when we've been in games when we were going 1-0 up and couldn't finish or couldn't take advantage. Well, Timo Werner seriously looks like he gets heavily involved in games, whether he's on form or off form. He certainly offers us something, and that's what we need. We need a bit of variety. We need a bit of variation. And like you said, with him playing at left wing or centre forward, those stats that are being shown clearly show something different to what people may be seeing just on the eye. If you sit back and have a look, like I said, people have had to sit back and look and say, is this the right deal? Is it good value for money? Is he the right player? Can he offer us something? Well, this clearly shows the way we get stronger is by having different ways to attack things. And Timo Werner, with these stats alone, show that we clearly have got something different, but something similar in regards to blistering pace. The blistering pace that we can have, you can never have too much pace in your team, can you? And he has got that in abundance. And these stats are even more impressive now to me than what I thought we were getting. Seeing the variation and the difference he could add is quite staggering.
Exactly. I completely agree. So, and what is interesting is those stats I'm reading, these are from a player who's, these stats are consistent. Those specific ones are consistent, whether he's on form or off form. I've looked at his goal scoring, XG kind of stats, shooting wise, and they vary. When he's on form, the XG and everything's really high and his shooting's really high. When he's off form, they're a lot lower. He's underperforming his XG. So that can vary. But what stays consistent with him are those stats I just showed you. Those stats of getting on the ball, carrying the ball long distances, getting in really, picking up the ball in really attacking positions. So all those kind of things are very consistent. And I say, these things aren't very, you're not going to see these things on Match of the Day, is my point. These aren't things that these are things that people will pick up on when you analyze the data and you watch him play enough times and all that kind of stuff. That is what you're going to pick up on in terms of what he's really strong at. So I think if you're going for a data-led approach and all that kind of stuff, and you're looking for these kind of attributes in a winger, then they've probably looked at Timo Werner and they've said, yeah, he's off form. Yeah, maybe he's not scoring the goals he used to, but he's got certain attributes that could definitely work in our system, and not just work in our system, stats that we are currently missing, attributes that we currently are lacking in our squad with some of the players that we have playing in those positions. And he can really help bring those attributes to the team and really help unlock something very, very different. And we know if he's on form as well, if he gains some confidence, maybe those shooting stats that vary will go to the upper echelons of what we know he can do. Maybe he'll start hitting the corners again from his shots rather than, going wide or hitting the post or whatever it is. So I don't think we've signed him for his goal scoring. I don't think we've signed him on this hope that he becomes a 20-goal a season player again. I think we've signed him because we looked at the data and we said this guy can bring something completely different to the wide areas that we have at the moment and can bring very specific attributes. And I think based on that, that's why it could be a very smart move.
Well, first of all, we got told as a club, and as a fan base, that this is the road Tottenham are going down now. They've seen what was going on at Brighton and other teams, and they want to go down the data analytics. And if that's what they're doing, they've done their job here, haven't they? They've literally, like you and I have just broken down, they found a player that Ange Postecoglou has probably said, I need a player that could do X, Y, and Z. And by the data, and I stress by the data, he's clearly, they've done their job. But we said this with Vicario. This was a data-driven signing, and look how that one's turning out. This is a very, very smart move for me. It really is. And like you said, like I'm about to say, this is with you then start putting this kind of stats and everything in, and then you put a fit and fire in James Maddison, supplying him. A Destiny Adogi coming alongside playing alongside him and motoring down. You've got a Porro that will find him. The data is there, and like I said, he's going somewhere where hopefully he'll feel loved again, he'll feel appreciated again. And if we can get this guy firing, even at 50% of what he was in his first stint at Leipzig, we have one hell of a player. We have an added string to our bow that we didn't have prior. I was struggling to find a downside on it before we did this video. Now I simply can't find one at all. I cannot find a downside.
Because people will look at this, obviously there'll be opposition fans or even some Spurs fans, they'll look at it and they look at the most important stats essentially, but they'll probably look at his goals and assist stats, right, over the last few years, and they'll make judgments on that. Look, he's dried up, and which is true. Like, he obviously clearly hasn't been as effective when it comes to being in front of goal and as clinical as he used to be. But I think we're not signing him based on that. We're signing him on based on these underlying stats that he's consistently strong at and has always been fairly good at. And I think that's kind of where I'm looking at this, because I'm looking at the angle, because obviously when you hear Timo Werner's a Tottenham, it came out of nowhere. It's like a player who has been out of form. Where's the logic in it? So I'm drilling deeper. I am starting to see some logic now. I'm starting to see the not just from a financial side, but also from a data side, how he performs, what we need in the squad as well. If you put those things together, this is starting to make a bit of sense now.
What I will add to this as well, if we look at all these stats you've brought up and comparisons or whatever, and you look at it and you have to say, who is there about in January that you can get those kind of stats and involvement that isn't going to be in the 80, 90, 100 million plus kind of bracket of players? You bring this in. This is a guy, like we said in the update earlier, this is a complete punt from left field. Like, it's come out of nowhere. And the stats are there to show that he can do it. Not he might be able to do it. He can. That's what we've got to remember. He can do it. This isn't a hit and hope. This is a guy that's got some substance behind him and a bit of history behind him. You talk about his attribute, his goal ratio and everything. We looked at it. What was it? 23 goal involvements or goal contributions, in 56 games, which is just shy of 50%, one in every two, just shy of it. That's not bad. That's not bad, 1 in 2. It's almost 50%. Again, for a player that has very, very high ceiling, coming here on loan, we've got to remember, that's the thing we've got to remember. He's here for 6 months. If he sets the ground running and smashes it, then we've got the option to take up to make it a full-time transfer. If not, we move on. But for 6 months or for the rest of the season, we need someone that could offer us something different and hopefully fire us to Champions League, FA Cup, maybe more. And does this guy look like he has the capabilities to do it? Yes. Do we have to worry about him settling in London? No. Do we have to worry about his grasp of the English language? No. There's more and more ticks to this deal. The more and more, like you said, the deeper you drill, it makes more and more sense.
All right, well, that is all we have time for today's video. I want to thank Brian Daigle yet again for joining me on today's video. Let me know in the comment section below what you think of the prospective Timo Werner signing. Do you see the logic to it now, or are you still doubting whether this signing can be a success? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Also, go and subscribe to Tottenham on Tour if you want to see more of Brian Daigle. The link will be in the title of this video. But that's all we have time for. Like, subscribe, and comment. And as always, come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.